first I want to talk about the subtlety of disruptive ideas. Smart and clever people so often are misunderstood or maybe even misunderstand the potential of their own idea. So I'm going to go through a couple examples, and the first one you can probably guess. You're going to say, oh, Jeremy, he's going to tell us about Thomas Edison bringing the light bulb to England, and they probably didn't see the potential. Sure. But here's what I found. I found that back in the day, they didn't used to just reject your idea. They used to like to reject them and insult them. And to make this virtual learning session a little more fun, I found the actual insults for you. So for good old Tommy E, he brought the light bulb to England, and they told him that his idea was unworthy of the attention of practical or scientific men. Maybe if they talked to the ladies, England would have had light. Next example, Western Union and the telephone. Western Union would have been the natural acquirer of the telephone patent when Alexander Graham Bell offered to sell it to them for $100,000. And the reason why Western Union was so significant is that in the 1800s, if you wanted to send a business telegram, you went to Western Union. That was the telegram company. And yet, when they saw the phone, what they saw was something that looked awkward, and so they rejected Alexander Graham Bell and insulted him, telling him his idea was idiotic. Why would any person want to use this ungainly and impractical device? Walt Disney used to be employed by the Kansas City Star until they rejected him and insulted him, firing him with the note that he lacked imagination and had no good ideas. Which brings me to Ferruccio, probably my favorite story in the mix. You see, Ferruccio was a creative problem solver. He was an innovative thinker, and basically after World War II, he used those skills to start fixing up abandoned war machines and turning them into farm machines. And pretty soon, he got good at it, and he decided to start selling and making his own tractors. And pretty soon, he was a millionaire. And as a millionaire, he got himself a Ferrari. But he wasn't a regular Ferrari driver. He had the Ferrari coat, he had the Ferrari hat. He was very excited to go to the Ferrari track meets, where one day he met up with Enzo Ferrari. And he went up to Enzo and he said, hey Enzo, I actually have a way to make your Ferrari better. I know how to fix the terrible clutch that you had. But Enzo didn't like being told what to do, so he rejected him and insulted him, telling him, you may be able to drive a tractor, but not a Ferrari. You stick to making tractors, and I'll make the cars. Pretty wild story, hey? What? You want more? Okay, what if I tell you his last name? Lamborghini! And to this day, Ferruccio's company still does make tractors. It's just that some of them look like that. What a lesson. Now, I'm going to go through a couple of these a little faster, and you've heard some of these things, I guess, well, this example here, Kodak, but I've gone a little bit further, and I've interviewed all of these people that were involved in the teams, and I've always found it surprising to hear how much they loved their job and how they generally felt supported. So Steve Sasson in 1975 invented digital photography. Kodak let him explore and experiment all the time. And so he loved that. But they never commercialized his ideas quite properly because their culture revolved around beating Fuji with the perfect Kodak quality print. And because of that, he could never imagine, or they couldn't imagine, rolling out a digital camera until it could make a better photo than Fuji's silver halide photography. To me, he said, a company's great culture can be the seed to your own destruction. A couple other examples. Xerox invented personal computing, the graphic user interface, the mouse. People think those things were invented by Bill Gates and Steve Jobs. No, those guys went on tours in the 80s at Xerox, and Xerox didn't even patent the personal computer because the good money was in photocopiers. Smith Corona invented the laptop word processor, the grammar checker, the spell checker, saving to a disk, and their machine looked a lot less clumsy than the computers with all their peripherals of the 1990s. And despite this, they actually started making computers in 1990. But in 1991, a global economic recession hit. And when that did, the team said, hey, everyone in the computer group, come back to head office and help us work through the typewriter business. We'll get back to computers in a few years. 3 years later, Smith Corona declares bankruptcy for the very first time, and the joint venture partner whom they abandoned, Acer, goes on to make computers, being the second largest computer maker in the world. Wow. HP was pitched 3 times by their employee, Wozniak, who wanted to get into personal computers. Atari was approached by Apple and Steve Jobs, who they employed. He wanted to give them a 33% stake in his new venture, Apple, for $50,000, which would have paid off. EDS had a chance to buy Microsoft. Microsoft counteroffered with a $60 million offer, but it was rejected. Excite offered to purchase Google for $800,000, and Google basically responded saying, no, we won't sell for less than $1 million. MySpace could own Facebook, Yahoo could own Facebook, Britannica could have been Carta, and Carta could have been Wikipedia, and Blockbuster Video had 3 chances to buy Netflix for $50 million. Now, once again, I interviewed the teams here, and if you really want to dive into it, what's interesting is that the good money came from snacks. The movie money went to Hollywood. And so even though Blockbuster started pioneering online video streaming, even though Blockbuster caught up to Netflix in 6 months, once they did and Netflix panicked, offering to sell, the board of directors had to take a look at the offer. And they said, no, the good money comes from snacks. CEO, you're fired. New CEO comes to us from 7-Eleven. Yes, get us some of that snack money. Return us to snack goodness. Stop talking to Netflix and fire the online team. You make like one bad decision, you know? But then I wouldn't have my favorite Twitter account, the last Blockbuster store. If you plan on coming in today, just tweet me and I'll run it over and open up the store. Sometimes we get excited when cars pull into our lots, but it turns out they're just divorced parents passing along their children. And a lot of people don't know this, but we own a large portion of Netflix. Just kidding, our electricity just got shut off. And you know, every single person listening to this lesson right now, all of us could have been more financially successful if we took every dollar we earned and poured it into Amazon pretty much at any point in time, even the current economic scenario that we're in. But we don't, because new ideas seem awkward. A couple of geeks who sketched out some software could destroy Sears? I don't think so, until they did. Opportunity starts off subtle and awkward. In fact, if we went through 50 or 100 more examples of overlooked opportunity, I think what you would find most intriguing is that you can find these examples not just with random people missing out on the opportunity, but actually more likely the market leader misses out on the opportunity, and a time period of chaos, crisis, or recession is the time period that resets the rules, causing the incumbent player to lose and a new player to come in. These new ideas seem sort of awkward or different, but then once chaos ensues, people are willing to try that new option, and the incumbent maybe at the same time is a bit more conservative, the markets shuffle, and then these periods of chaos are when the market leader actually exchanges. It happens because people, smart people in particular, successful people, successful companies, overestimate their level of control consistently. In fact, 97% of Fortune 500 CEOs in this last few years state that innovation is one of their top priorities. It's one of the things they're best at. It's in their DNA. But that's all of them. 97%, that's all of them. How's that possible? And it's because we think we have this higher level of control, we prioritize innovation, and yet in our research at Trend Hunter, with 30 or 40,000 people doing our innovation assessment, we know that about half of people don't feel like their organization has a strong innovation plan. half don't think their organization adapts fast enough, half don't believe that they have enough time to work on new ideas, and half don't believe their organization knows how to turn ideas into reality. That data is pre-COVID-19. So imagine that in these last few years, we've run into a scenario where all of the CEOs want innovation to happen, companies think and have it in their ego that they're great at innovation, and yet we know that almost everyone, half of the people, feel unsupported and as if their organization can't adapt. And now? Well, now we enter chaos where people have to adapt. So which are the organizations that are going to shake out of this? Everyone wants innovation to happen, but most people don't break from the path. Now, the workshop question for this section on disruptive ideas is more simply to ask yourself, what can you do to encourage disruptive thinking? And that could mean in your own personal time, or with your teams, or within your company as a cultural whole. And some of the tactics I'll suggest would be, how do you find more ways to assume you're incorrect? How could you be more open to new ideas? How could you better reward and encourage dissent? Where could you case study emerging trends? And finally, how might you better embrace diversity? And that wraps up our module. See you in the next lesson.